There's been a long-standing infiltration of all of our institutions in America. They have this Marxist ideology. They don't love America. They want to undermine the American people. The best way to undermine the United States of America is to do it from within.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
Lux Lion is an online boutique that showcases gorgeous, handcrafted jewelry and accessories from highly skilled African designers. If you've been thinking about making a purchase from Lux Lion, there's no better time than now. I'm running a holiday special while supplies last. Use promo code THANKFUL30 for 30% off your purchase. Welcome to the State of Freedom, everybody, where we are grounded in faith in the Constitution, and we are committed to giving voice to the truth, living with courage, and taking action. And as Chris was reminding me just before we came on the show, now the #1 conservative political podcast in the state. And that's been running, Chris, for about, 6 months?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And your briefcase is not yet getting heavy, Danielle. I don't mind carrying it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Very gentlemanly of you. Well, it is Tuesday, December 9th. It's 10 a.m. Central, and I am Danielle Walker. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, the watchdog in chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander. And we are coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. And as always, you can catch us later on our audio only platforms as well, like Spotify and Apple Podcast. Joining us today is a longtime friend of the show. Let me bring him up. And a tremendous advocate for veterans, Mark Lucas. Y'all will remember him in his previous role as executive vice president of the Article 3 project. And Mark, since it's been a little while, I'm going to give you a proper introduction. Prior to his role at the Article 3 project, he was executive director of Concerned Veterans for America. Mark was an infantry officer in the Iowa Army National Guard. And as a graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School, he was awarded the Combat Infantry Badge and Bronze Star Medal in Afghanistan during the deadliest year of Operation Enduring Freedom. He also deployed to South Korea during the height of tensions with North Korea. And if I recall, you volunteered for that, Mark. And this year, he launched an advocacy group that we are proudly supporting and working with, Veteran Action. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Good morning, guys, and congratulations on being the top political conservative podcast in Louisiana. Very well deserved. And I think you guys have a really important politician that lives in Louisiana. So that's quite the statement.
One or two?
Yes, last time I checked. Yes, he's still here, Mark.
And a new football coach. I hear that's been making a lot of news. I hear all that
coach,
up here in Iowa too.
Coach, absolutely. And in the minds of most Louisiana citizens, for better or for worse, those two issues are equally important. I'm not sure that they should be, but they are. And yes, indeed, we do have. And we need one. We need one for sure.
Well, y'all don't want to get me started on that topic. I'm just going to leave that over here for another day. But Chris, when it's just me and you, we can have a long rant about the money that can be found for coaches that can't be found for other things.
Well said.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get all irritated and upset, let me read the scripture of the day. It is Luke chapter 14, and it is verses 16 to 24. It's a parable. I'm just going to read the whole thing. Jesus replied with this parable. There was a man who invited many to join him in a great feast. When the day for the feast arrived, the host instructed his servant to notify all the invited guests and tell them, "Come, for everything is now ready for you." But one by one, they all made excuses. One said, "I can't come. I just bought some property and I'm obligated to go and look it over." Another said, "Please accept my regrets, for I just purchased 5 teams of oxen and I need to make sure they can pull the plow." Another one said, "I can't come because I just got married." The servant reported back to the host and told him all of their excuses. So the master became angry and said to his servant, "Go at once throughout the city and invite anyone you find, the poor, the blind, the disabled, the hurting, and the lonely, and invite them to my banquet." When the servant returned to his master, he said, "Sir, I have done what you've asked, but there's still room for more." So the master told him, "All right, go out again, and this time bring them all back with you. Persuade the beggars on the streets, the outcasts, even the homeless. Urgently insist that they come in and enjoy the feast so that my house will be full. I say to you all, the one who receives an invitation to the feast with me and makes excuses will never enjoy my banquet." And this is a parable about being invited into faith in the Lord Jesus. And a few things struck me about it this morning. First, it's such an honor and an undeserved privilege to be invited into the kingdom of God. And Jesus told us that no one can come to the kingdom, no one can come to the Father except through him. He's the only way. And if we stop and really take time to think about and comprehend the suffering of Jesus, he endured such tremendous physical and emotional torment in our place. He did nothing wrong, but he chose to go in our place so that we could be made right in the sight of God. So, how could we be too busy or preoccupied or self absorbed to make time to choose Him, to pursue the knowledge of Him and relationship with Him? The second thing that struck me was that there's always more room at His table. So, for those who feel unworthy or passed over, too broken, rejected, He has a place for you. He's the healer of mind, body, heart, and soul. He's the one who wants every single one of His children to be seated around His table. So, as we go into this Christmas season, don't be so focused on the events and the to-dos that you reject the opportunity to come to the Lord, to commune with the Lord who we are celebrating. And if you feel unqualified, unworthy, or somehow too messed up, don't use that as an excuse to remain on the outskirts of Jesus's love. He's invited us all in, and he gives us the choice whether to accept his invitation and go in and dine with him.
And Danielle, that's exactly where he wants us to be so that we can have the kind of heart and openness to his grace. We have to be there because it's only then. Aeschylus said that, I resisted, I resisted, I resisted, and the pain, the pain, the pain fell like drops of blood upon the human heart, my heart, until finally, in utter desperation and even against my own will, wisdom came forth through the awesome grace of God. So we have to be broken before we can be open to God's love. And that's really where he wants us to be. He's close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And so people who are feeling really, really down on themselves and really, there's no hope for me. I can't get over this. I'm constantly tormented by my sins or by my past. Guess what? Not only should you not feel ashamed about that, but that is exactly where Christ wants you to be so that you can really be fully receptive of his grace. And there's nothing that is beyond his redemption, as you tell me often, Danielle, absolutely nothing. So this time of the year, I think it's so important that we open our hearts and recognize that it's precisely the frame of mind. I can't do this, Lord. It's too much for me. I have to have you. And you just surrender unconditionally to him. And that's where wisdom and grace comes in. And I think Mark, as a believing Christian, understands that. And on a practical level, when we do that, not only do we finally find grace and peace in the Lord, but it's interesting that it makes everything else we do in life that much more effective, that much more joyful, recognizing that ultimately everything really is in his hands, regardless of the results of anything. Everything is his. And I know that's the way Mark approaches things, which is why every time he comes on this show, he is a picture of enthusiasm and eagerness and tenacity, which is what I love about you, Mark. So thank you for being here with us today. And it's just always a pleasure. I don't know whether it's your second or third time on, but we love having you on the State of Freedom, sir.
Well, thank you for having me on, and there'll be plenty more visits because we have a lot of work to do for veterans.
Yeah, we do.
A lot of work. Yeah. I got to ask you, Mark, straight off about this, seditious six. You have these six national representatives, a few senators, a few congressmen. who do this video on November 18th, and I can't figure out exactly what precipitated it. They certainly don't say in the video what precipitated it, but they're basically saying, well, this is just a reminder to all the soldiers and military guys out there that you have an obligation to refuse to follow unlawful orders. So the first thought that I had was, well, certainly there has to be some specific precipitating factor. There has to be some order that they're going to talk about that they are, that they are disputing, but they don't do that. So my question to you, Mark, is this. It seems to me that this is a veiled invitation to general mutiny, and it seems extraordinarily dangerous to have powerful figures like this telling people you must refuse unlawful orders. You have to refuse don't give up the ship, but they cite no examples. Do you find that pretty alarming that they would do that?
I remember when that video first came out, and I thought it was one of the most dangerous videos we could see recorded from members of Congress, because it's very clear that they wanted to build a wedge between military officers and the commander-in-chief and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. I wrote an op-ed in the Federalist talking about how dangerous that video was, and I speculated that it could be in anticipation of Venezuela. It wasn't completely crystal clear at that point, but I just kind of alluded to the fact that we have a lot of growing military operations in the Caribbean. And sure enough, like clockwork, there was this hoax that came out on the double strike war crimes issue that we're hearing about in the media. So I believe that Senator Mark Kelly, also some of the other members of that video, either served in the military or in the intelligence agencies. And it's no coincidence that the person that published that video was a Michigan senator who was a CIA officer. So they know how to build propaganda videos. If you watch that video, they all credential themselves at the beginning.
Yeah.
And they have like this hypnotic repetition saying that you can disobey illegal orders, yet they don't mention one. And they have the call to action, right? Don't give up the ship. But when they were pressed, even on friendly mainstream media sources like the Sunday morning talk shows, they could not identify a specific illegal order issued by President Trump. And if you look at all of the lawfare that's been occurring under President's second term, it hasn't stopped after the election. You see these radical leftist judges who are challenging President Trump's orders. And over 90% of those challenges, those TROs, have been overturned by the Supreme Court of the United States, which is very hard to do, to have that high of a success rate. So you're seeing that, no, President Trump has no issue with illegal orders, but we do have a problem with sedition. And that's why I've encouraged President Trump, Secretary of War Hegseth, and members of Congress to investigate Senator Mark Kelly, who's a retiree of the Navy, bring him back on the active duty, court-martial him, and let's have an investigation. But also for those others who don't qualify for a UCMJ investigation, let's haul them in front of Congress for hearings. I know a lot of the grassroots are saying, Mark, I'm tired of hearings. I want arrests. But if you look at a lot of the crimes that are being prosecuted right now, they started with perjury in front of a congressional hearing.
That's right.
So let's keep the pressure on these Democrats. Let's use every legal, political, and financial means to hold to account, because that's what they did to President Trump. And what we're trying to do is prosecute real crimes. You know, President Trump back in 2024, you guys remember this. He had an unprecedented and a republic-ending type of lawfare campaign waged against them. They tried to charge him with non-crimes and throw him in prison for the rest of his life. They tried to kick him illegally off of the ballot. And when all of those things failed, they underfunded his Secret Service detail, which ultimately almost got him shot on live TV.
Yeah.
And that lawfare has not stopped. Just because President Trump won, it doesn't mean, hey, the Democrats are going to give up. No, they continue to wage this lawfare. And that's what we're seeing with the Seditious 6 video. They want to obstruct President Trump's agenda. A duly elected president that won with a mandate. He won every consequential swing state. He won the popular vote. And what he's doing against the narco-terrorists are very popular with the American people. But these Democrats are going to try to undermine him every step of the way.
Yeah. And I believe Secretary Hegseth has launched an investigation into Mark Kelly specifically. I think that he gave a 2-week time period for that investigation, or initial investigation, to be conducted. So I guess we should be seeing the results of that maybe by early next week or something. But on the point, Mark, of President Trump, as we were rewatching that video this morning, Chris and I couldn't help but think about President Trump, who simply encouraged people to peacefully and lawfully protest at the Capitol on January 6th, and all of those legislators who came out. Chuck Schumer, our own Bill Cassidy, and accused Trump of inciting an insurrection. How does this square with what they're saying? Because to me, if there's even a rumbling or a hint of mutiny within ranks, these people need to be completely rounded up, and I think there's a lot of ground to go after them for that.
This is a real insurgency, and that's what's being waged by members of Congress. And what that video was, it was a wink and a nod to radical members of the military
Yeah.
by saying, hey, if you disobey your commander in chief, if you don't follow orders, we have your back. And if we win, Democrats, if they win the 2026 midterms, then they know that they will be cleared, right? And what we saw, during COVID-19, for instance, those are the same type of radical members in uniform that Senator Mark Kelly is trying to activate, because that was a true unlawful order, the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. And a lot of us in uniform at the time were openly discussing that, right? And that was pretty crystal clear, I believe, that it was an unlawful order. And therefore, a lot of us refused the vaccine and we were punished for it. People were kicked out because of that vaccine mandate. So that video is trying to capitalize on the fact that there's been a lot of radicals that have infiltrated the military, and a wink and a nod again to let those guys be activated. So what we are trying to do is say, hey, let's actually prosecute real crimes, right? And let's actually look at the rule of law here. Whereas the Democrats, they're just trying to use this as a political opportunity to slow down the progress that President Trump is making. I'll make one other point. Barack Obama committed a ton of drone strikes. And one of those drone strikes was an extrajudicial drone strike that killed 2 American citizens. And one of those citizens was a 16-year-old boy. So if Democrats want to play this game, let's start pulling the archive footage of President Obama's drone strikes. Let's start looking at what Democrats were doing under multiple administrations, including Joe Biden. Republicans have to get smart. And they got to quit falling for the traps and the diversions and the distractions of the Democrat Party. Go on offense. Go after Senator Mark Kelly. Go after Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Go after Lloyd Austin, the former Secretary of Defense. Let's charge these guys with the real crimes they committed and quit falling for the Democrats' games.
And Mark, you mentioned the word insurgency. Do you feel, are we in the middle of a color revolution, as some like General Flynn are saying?
I believe so. I mean, there's been a long-standing infiltration of all of our institutions in America. They have this Marxist ideology. They don't love America. They want to undermine the American people. They want to undermine our elections. They want to undermine our educational institutions and teach our children that America is bad. This has been a long-standing problem. And it makes sense because the enemies of the United States, they do not want to challenge our military head to head. So the best way to undermine the United States of America is to do it from within.
That's so true, Mark. So back to this video. So if they investigate, interrogate the people who put this video together and say what specific orders that Pete Hegseth or the military have given are unconstitutional, unlawful, or illegal, and why. And if they can't show any specific order that's been given that was illegal or unconstitutional, the only inference, as far as I'm concerned, is that this is an invitation to general mutiny by the military, and it is in fact sedition. And if that's the case, there should be severe consequences. Mark, that if they had specific examples that they could point to in this video of illegal activity or illegal orders on the part of the military, they absolutely would have done so.
I think that's why this video is so damning, is that they can't provide a specific example, and they fall back on this defense of saying, well, we didn't say anything that was untrue. Everybody knows that you don't have to follow an unlawful order. Like, they were just basically specifying what the military already knew. Well, by saying that repeatedly in that hypnotic fashion, by also dropping this on social media and encouraging people to do this, there's way more context behind this. I would like to look at who developed that script. I like to look at the staffers who were a part of this video production, look at maybe the money that was involved in the production of this, and really get more context. And that can happen with a legitimate investigation. Right now, it's just being litigated in the mainstream media and on social media, where these guys are saying, well, now Slotkin, the Michigan senator, is saying that she's been receiving tons of complaints of people that are saying, I'm following orders I think may be unlawful. Well, that came out just, I think, this week. She wasn't saying that on the Sunday morning shows. So their stories continue to change. Well, Republicans, like I said before, get smart, get tough, haul them in under oath. Let's get answers to this. Let's have an investigation. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to undermine the military chain of command. They're trying to introduce confusion into our ranks. And I can tell you, as a member of the military that served overseas, you do not want to have any confusion with orders given. And I had to follow lawful orders that may have been tactically questionable, that almost got me and my men killed, but that was a lawful order. I had to follow it. If I ever doubted it in front of my men, that just creates a whole host of issues.
Exactly.
So they know exactly what they're doing, and they need to be held to account.
And what is the statement, Mark, in the video that the Trump administration is pitting the military against the American people? And that is in the video. That is a specific statement in the video. I mean, can you imagine, how this could affect a soldier, even a soldier who's in a critical combat situation and he has it in the back of his head? I don't even know if what I'm doing is legal or not. That potential could create the sort of hesitation, psychological confusion that gets men killed.
Absolutely. And what we're seeing is that Democrats are panicking because they know that they're losing their institution, their institutional control. Like, I was shocked that there were so many people in uniform that were enthusiastically enforcing an unlawful order. It was something like I've never seen before.
In
That
COVID.
they were embracing kicking service members out.
Yeah.
People who actually served in combat, they're willing to pull a trigger and take a life on behalf of this country, that they're willing to just throw them out the door. And so what
For
the
refusing a
Democrats
mandate, the COVID
exactly
mandate.
with the COVID-19 mandate, and what the Democrats are seeing is they're losing operational control. Pete Hegseth and President Trump have conducted a historical recruitment and retention drive in our military. People are coming back in waves, and they see what Secretary Hegseth is doing to root out the DEI and the woke agenda. So what we saw under Biden and Lloyd Austin was that the left had really gotten control of the military in a quick way. And they're starting to see that we're losing control here. We need to slow this down, because they need the military in their mind. They need the military to achieve their political objectives, which is not, by the way, protecting the American people. Because if you look at those narco-terrorists, they're killing more Americans than we lost in the global war on terror. They're killing way more Americans than Al-Qaeda or ISIS or the Taliban or the Haqqani terror network. We are losing hundreds of thousands of Americans year over year to this drug war.
Yeah.
And President Trump, when he's trying to protect the American people, now we're being told that's unlawful. It seems like there's two different standards. It seems like Republican orders are illegal, yet Democrat orders are lawful. And the American people are seeing through it.
Yeah, and I think this ship that they want to save is the deep state ship.
It's absolutely, I have to say this, Mark, because they're not just limiting this to, they're not just inviting disruption in the chain of command generally in the military. I've read things here and there about they're also beginning to attack Pete Hegseth personally once again regarding his background, some of the struggles that he has had. And what's amazing how they never mention that he's won 2 Bronze Stars. They never mention the fact that he's a decorated war hero who carries the very same scars of war that many others carry. And I want to give you an opportunity right now to just to reiterate, the kind of person that he is and the sacrifices that he has made for this country. I cannot stand the way they characterize this man. He has more courage and more backbone in his pinky finger than most of these people have in their entire lives and in their wildest imagination.
Well, Pete and I both served together in the 34th Infantry Division. Like you said, he deployed to Iraq. He deployed to Afghanistan. He earned 2 Bronze Stars. He was a trigger puller, and he wants to protect the United States of America. He wants to protect the homeland. If you talk to my fellow veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, we are so excited that for once we have a president, a commander in chief, and a secretary of war that are focused on our backyard. They're focused on our hemisphere because we'd much rather defend Washington, D.C., Chicago, or Los Angeles than we would want to defend Baghdad or Kandahar. And we've seen that our iconic American cities have fallen to these leftist radicals who allow crime to grow rampant. They're disobeying the rule of law. We saw at the southern border where Joe Biden had that border wall wide open, and we invited millions of people, unvetted. We don't know who they are, several terrorists. We just had
including one, Mark, who on November 26th seriously wounded 2 National Guardsmen, right?
Killed one.
Absolutely.
Killed one.
So when we look at what President Trump and Secretary Hegseth are doing, we are just very thankful that for once, our military is able to focus on defending the homeland because we were made a promise. They told us, we're going to fight the terrorists over there, so we won't have another 9/11. So our families won't have to worry about this. Well, we just had, like you said, a National Guard soldier killed in our nation's capital, blocks away from the White House by an Afghan former soldier. So we have to get situational awareness and we got to get firm, positive control on the security situation in the United States of America. That starts with what President Trump is doing by securing the border. He locked it down. It starts by addressing the threats, the immediate threats that are killing Americans, which is the narco-terrorists and the cartels, and also like Antifa and these far radical leftist groups who actually want to kill people. They tried to assassinate President Trump twice that we know of. They effectively killed Charlie Kirk. They took one of the greatest conservative generals that we had on the battlefield. They took him away from us. So we have to fight back, and we have to do so lawfully, and it starts right here in our backyard.
Yeah. And I love, Mark, that you're talking about being on the offensive and being aggressive because for too long, Republicans have, wanted to be nice and taken that 1990s, compassionate conservative idea to a fault, to an absolute and utter failing fault. And I guess on the note of an absolute and utter failing fault, can we talk for a second about the state of our veterans? Chris, you mentioned that they're accusing Secretary Hegseth of being a drunk. But even if he did struggle with substance abuse, this is something we're seeing rife with veterans across the board. I mean, the physical, mental, and emotional health of our veterans is in absolute and utter crisis. We had your colleague, Darren Selnick, on a couple weeks ago talking about the potential for reform, the need for reform, and the crisis itself. Has anything transpired in the last number of weeks since we've had him on? How are things going with Secretary Collins at the VA? We saw him in the cabinet meeting last week or something, talking about, making strides. But are the veterans feeling a difference?
Well, I'm so thankful that you guys host this podcast in Louisiana, which is a really impactful state with Speaker Johnson, because I want to make a plea to him and to all members in Congress that veterans are suffering every single day. We just lost another veteran last week by suicide in the front of the Audie Murphy VA hospital in San Antonio. We lost another veteran who took his life on the front steps of the Audie Murphy hospital, the same VA hospital earlier this year. We have a massive problem with veterans being able to receive access to care. And that's why I'm working with President Trump to pass the Veterans Access Act. It will provide veterans quicker access to care out in the community if the VA isn't able to see them in a timely manner. This is so important. President Abraham Lincoln, he made a solemn promise to the men that borne the battle that we would care for their orphans and their widows. And we were being failed every single day. This is a no-brainer. The Veterans Access Act is very popular. It's codifying what President Trump accomplished in his first term, which was the Mission Act, which provide veterans access and choice in their health care. So I'm urging Speaker Johnson, all the members in Congress to expedite the passage of this bill because we are losing veterans every single day.
And Mark, we look at this year, we look at the fact that we have sent through the illustrious hands of Tim Walz something like $80 million to fund Al-Shabaab. What the heck are we doing? Okay, like if there's all this flush of cash, who is taking care of the veterans? If there's anything in our national budget that needs to be prioritized, it is the health care of veterans. It is the care and feeding of our veterans who have sacrificed so much. I mean, I can't count the number of other things that should be slashed.
Well, this is a top priority of President Trump. I saw this in 2016 when he campaigned all across the country. He had a 10-point plan to help veterans. And that led to two of his most historic wins in his first term, which was the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act of 2017 and the Mission Act, which I mentioned earlier. He wants to provide world-class care to our veterans, and he wants to provide them the opportunity to go outside the VA if they can't be seen in a timely fashion. And veterans, Danielle, to get to your point, they're frustrated. They're seeing all of these people that are coming into this country illegally being taken care of. They see all this American aid that's going to the Taliban, going to other terrorist organizations. And all our veterans want to do is be able to get health care. They just want to be seen. The veteran that committed suicide earlier this year at the Audie Murphy VA hospital in San Antonio, he was just trying to talk to somebody. And they didn't want to talk to him. They were just trying to send him away with more pills, right? We just want to be heard. We want our fellow veterans to be served and to be protected because we believe, I think it's pretty simple, pretty standard. If you're willing to defend this country, if you're willing to die for this country, then you should be able to get world-class health care.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mark, I have to say this. And what stunned me so much about what Darren said was one particular point, that this is not just a matter of institutional negligence in the VA. There are VA administrators throughout the country who are actively undermining the ability of these soldiers to get health care to the point where they're actually being rewarded and promoted the more they deny requests for. Now, tell me how absolutely evil and sinister that is, that they would be not only opposing their ability to get good health care, maybe through third-party contracting that Darren talked about, but they actually are rewarded. There are built-in incentives for denying them their requests. I cannot tell you the level of anger that brings to my heart. I can't tell you that. And you're exactly right. These soldiers should be treated with elevated respect everywhere they go, and yet they're being treated with just the opposite, with utter disdain. Would you care to speculate, Mark? Because I asked Darren the same question. Why is it that the very institution that is supposed to be easing the burden of our military warriors would be actually actively undermining their ability to get care? Where does that come from?
It would shock people to know just how dark the Department of Veterans Affairs really is. I moved to DC in 2016 after Trump was elected, and I took over a group called Concerned Veterans for America. And I was working with the White House and members of Congress to pass the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act. All the bill was to hold bad VA employees accountable, like the ones that you're talking about, who allowed veterans to die on secret wait lists, like we saw with the VA waitlist scandal down in Phoenix, Arizona, which made national news. We just want to be able to hold them accountable and have them be fired. We also want to protect whistleblowers, right? Those good VA employees who saw what was going on and want to be able to come forward and blow the whistle on these people. And I could not believe how bad the VA was. It was one of the darkest, most murkiest parts of the swamp. It's also one of the largest federal bureaucracies we have in Washington. They have more employees than the Army has soldiers. It's unbelievable. So I think we have to take it to the next level, Chris. I'll break a little bit of news here. I have been talking with members of Congress about how to add criminal liability to a VA employee who allows a veteran to die.
Excellent.
Because they tried to block their access to care in the community. We are seeing VA bureaucrats. I'm not talking about the nurses and the doctors, the people in the front lines who are doing great work. I'm talking about the middle level managers who are breaking the law. They are breaking the law of the Mission Act, and they are not allowing a veteran access to care in the community. So what that means is if you go to the VA and they can't see you within 20 days, or if you have to drive more than 30 minutes to see a VA hospital, you have the right to get a referral to a community care provider. Pretty simple, right? Well, there are people in the VA that are denying those referrals and they're breaking the federal law. So my solution is, well, these guys keep on getting promoted. Sometimes they get bonused. So if they won't follow the law, then we have to actually add more teeth to it and say, you will be charged with a federal crime and you will face 25 to years in prison to life if a veteran dies on your watch. That's what I'm talking to with members of Congress, because we just can't seem to break through with the VA. These guys, they're unaccountable. They feel untouchable, and the Democrats protect them because they are a large federal workforce that is unionized, and they want to protect their bureaucracy. I made a note here. You guys won't believe this. There's a book written by Philip Longman that's called Best Care Anywhere: Why VA Healthcare Would Work Better for Everyone. So what they're trying to do is not just provide inadequate healthcare to our veterans. The VA is the opportunity for the left to prove out government-run healthcare, and they want to export it to the rest of the U.S. population. That's what this is all about. They need to protect their turf, their jobs, their facilities, and it's for an ideological purpose, which is not aligned with President Lincoln. It's not aligned with the mission of the VA that's stamped on the front of the building that says they care for the men who bore the battle and they care for their widow and their spouse. No, they want political control.
But Mark, but I want to ask more specifically, because I want you to try to give me an answer on this if you can. Why is it that people who work for the VA, ostensibly, you would think that people at least start out as VA administrators with a bit more of an idealistic perspective, sincerely motivated, with a heart to truly help those who have been scarred by war? What is the source of this active hostility on the part of this agency toward the very men and women they're charged with protecting and helping, and that they want to protect their turf? I understand they want their bureaucracy. What I'm asking you about is, where does this hostility come from?
That's a tough question to answer because they're trying to protect their turf. We know that for sure. We know that community care provides an existential threat to their job, right? Because if veterans continue to go out into the community, guess what that introduces? Competition.
Yeah.
And the VA, they don't feel like they can compete. Now, we do see that it's not just the VA also, like Chris, you'll see the same type of ideological leaning in the IRS, for instance. Like Lois Lerner, she did not need an order from President Obama to investigate all of these conservative nonprofits. She just did it. These Marxists just know the playbook.
So, so this is rooted in ideological, philosophical hostility.
A lot of it is, yes.
And incompetence. That was my experience at the Department of Labor when I worked there, which I affectionately refer to as the third circle of hell. It the bureaucrats there were so ineffective that anyone who came in with a single idea or any shred of energy to do something different to make life easier on people, you will be attacked. You will be mercilessly attacked as an intern. As an intern, as a young staffer, it doesn't matter. You will be completely railroaded by these people. I mean, we're talking from everyone from a senior secretary, like literal assistant secretary type person, administrative secretary, all the way through the senior executive service. They will railroad you. If you look like you're going to do something, uncover something, try and improve anything. So it is a turf war, and it's a battle from the incompetent. I will say that.
Yeah, that's so true. Mark, as a military veteran, as a combat decorated military veteran, do you know, are you close to men and women who have personally suffered adverse experiences in trying to deal with the VA, and who have, maybe even died by their own hand, or however? I mean, is this a personal issue to you?
It's very personal. I was failed by the VA. I was misdiagnosed on my post-traumatic stress. I was having issues with my stomach, and I thought it was dietary. So I went in several times and had different tests conducted, and they couldn't figure out why I had these stomach aches and these pains in the afternoon. And they were so bad, I'd be curled up like on the floor of my apartment, just in pain. I couldn't move. And I thought it was maybe something I ate over in Afghanistan because of all the local food I ate, and they had no solution. They didn't know what the problem was. And so I thought, well, Lent's coming up, and I'll do a fast, and I'll cut out everything that's not meat. And I basically kind of went on like a carnivore diet. And I thought that fixed the problem. But then several months later, I was listening to a podcast from a special operator who had the same problem. And I didn't realize that he had the same stomach pains that would coincide with the same part of the day, late
Mm.
afternoon, when they would get ambushed. And we would get ambushed late in the afternoon because the sun would be coming down over the mountains, and we would have to shoot up into the mountains. You'd be looking into the sun. And so my post-traumatic stress was diagnosed by a podcast. And if the VA was really focused on its core mission, which would be to help with combat related issues, you would think that this would be a pretty easy thing to diagnose by saying, hey, we've talked to thousands of veterans who've had these type of stomach pains. And so I just vowed to never go back to the VA again. I've had other people who have had problems with post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury, bad diagnoses. Now, there are some VA hospitals that do a good job. There's some of my friends who love the VA. I'd say that's a smaller percentage. But just to talk to you about how personal this is, God helped me get through this post-traumatic stress. Even though I didn't believe I had it, I leaned on him for that help. I had a good family to come home to. I had a strong faith to come home to, and that really helped me. A lot of my friends, they don't have that, and they're struggling. And over Thanksgiving, I talked to a guy. I snuck away from my family and went to a guest bedroom of my in-laws and called him because he was having problems. I just felt called that, you know, I want to be there for him because it's Thanksgiving holiday. He's all alone and he's
Yeah.
struggling. I want to make sure that he's at least being heard. And you just hear these stories over and over again that these guys were willing to give up everything for America, and they feel like their country's failing them. So this is
How
very
much,
personal
Mark?
to me.
Yes, and Mark, that's so powerful to me, and thank you for sharing your personal story there. How much of this suffering that they're going through do you think stems from sort of the general indifference to, apart from the trauma that they suffered, which is clinical, I'm sure, but how much of it stems from what appears to be sort of the indifference to the sacrifice that they paid? I mean, if I go and pay almost the ultimate sacrifice for my country and see things that nobody should have to see and do things that nobody should have to do, and then come home to a grateful populace and a grateful country, a grateful nation, I can assure you that would be a great balm for my wounds, to know that I'm walking and I'm being nurtured and encouraged and appreciated. It seems like the indifference it is probably a huge, just the indifference that they receive is probably a huge part of their problem, apart from the actual scars they suffer.
Is a huge part of the problem. And there's a lot of anecdotal evidence with veterans who commit suicide on the grounds of a VA hospital to send a message.
Yeah.
And think about this. This is a person or people who are, they're lonely, they're in despair. They go to the VA to try to get help and they don't get help. And that just adds to their despair. And that's one of the driving causes for suicide. Again, I don't have statistics on this, but anecdotally, I believe that the VA has been a major driver of veteran suicide because they do not listen and care for our veterans.
Is Doug Collins fully aware? Do you think Darren suggested that maybe I can't remember exactly what he said, but he suggested that maybe there is a communications issue, and maybe Secretary Collins is not fully and completely aware of just how grave the problem is. And maybe it has to do with the fact that we need more whistleblower protections. Maybe a lot of people are afraid to talk or whatever. But do you think that the secretary is generally aware of the gravity of this situation as you've described it?
I do, but also there are people that are professional bureaucrats, what we call career employees within these departments, who are very good at not sharing information and of trying to act like an ally, but then hold back and not provide the full story. So I do know that, Congressman or VA Secretary Collins served as a member of Congress from the state of Georgia. I believe that he voted for both the Mission Act and the VA Accountability Act. And what we do need is Congress to step up and basically codify these access standards to really it'll be a forcing mechanism that'll make it even more of a challenge for these VA bureaucrats to kind of go around the intent of the law, right? By codifying those access standards. But then the next step would be Senator Marsha Blackburn's bill, which would create full choice for the VA, for veterans to say, hey, I can go outside the VA whenever I want. But I do think that we are getting to a critical point. The midterms are next year. You can have a lot of people in Congress that are going to be not in Washington. They're going to be back in their district. We need to get the Veterans Access Act passed, get that into law, and start helping veterans right away. And right now, we're in the holiday season. And as a military commander, this was a point of the year where we were always concerned about suicide because there's a lot of times where depression surges during the holidays, where there's family strife and problems or loneliness. Like right now is the time to really take care of our nation's veterans. Let's not just focus on veterans on Veterans Day or Memorial Day or on the 4th of July. Like let's focus on them 360 days of the year, right? 365 days of the year. We need to protect these guys right now and offer them access to healthcare because again, another suicide at a VA hospital last week. When's it going to stop? When's it going to stop?
Yeah. Mark, how can people do their part to support veterans? Can they support Veteran Action? Are there other organizations that you would suggest they support or even go into their own communities to support veterans directly during the holidays?
Go to veteranaction.org. I built an action center, like the same action center I built for the Article 3 project. And it allows you to call, email, and post your lawmakers on social media in less than 5 minutes. It's a very easy tool and effective. This was the tool that Mike Davis and I used to help confirm Trump's cabinet. People like Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel, where the mainstream media was saying these nominees are dead on arrival, we changed the politics. And we were able to do that because we had normal citizens take the time to call their lawmaker, to leave them a voicemail, or to talk to one of their representatives, to send an email and post on social media. So you can go to veteranaction.org, click on the Take Action button, and tell your lawmakers that they must pass the Veterans Access Act.
Mark, one final question here on the criminal penalties. To me, just instinctively, I think that having very stiff criminal penalties for denying or impeding swift, efficient access to care by these military heroes, either by omission or commission, either by affirmative acts or by refusing to act. Either one, I think, could have a dramatically positive effect on this. Are there any bills pending now, or do you see any bills realistically on the horizon that specifically include criminal penalties for these administrators?
My prediction is that you'll see a bill in 2026.
That's great to hear. Great to
Yeah.
hear. Well, thank you for your personal service as well. Thank you for all you're doing. Please give our regards to Darren, and thank you for joining us today. And we're gonna do our part to continue to get this word out, because it's a personal issue to me as well. My dad being a U.S. Marine and being very close to soldiers who have told me about their stories with the VA and some of the trauma. And I've noticed, Mark, that one of the reasons why I have such admiration for these men is that they don't go around, they don't have a psychology of victimhood. If anything, they're on the other extreme. They try so hard to carry it. They're men. They want to be strong men. They want to take care of their families, but they are broken inside by things that they can't explain, that they don't understand, and they just I love these guys. We wouldn't even, without people like you, Mark, we wouldn't even have the freedom to sit here, Danielle and I, and we talk about it all the time and exercise our First Amendment free speech without people like you. And yet the very people who are supposed to be taking care of them treat them like shit. And it is absolutely time for that to change in this country. It's got to change. And I really appreciate you and all your efforts.
Well, thank you guys. Always love being on your show.
It's great to see you, Mark. You have a wonderful afternoon, and Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry Christmas.
God bless.
Chris, I just love his tenacity because he's left Washington, but he still has a heart for veterans. I believe he's still active duty with the National Guard, but I love that he is relentlessly going to hound this administration and the entire Congress until his battle buddies, until his brothers and sisters in arms get the kind of care that they deserve. And I think it's such a model for us in every aspect of life that we're advocating for right now, every aspect, because we need to be relentless.
Absolutely. And I was so gratified, Danielle, to hear that there will be criminal penalties, serious criminal penalties included in situations where these scumbag administrators who hate veterans apparently are criminally prosecuted for retarding their efforts to get the care that they so desperately need. And I think that's a huge part of changing all of this. They have to know that it's not just going to be reduced funding. It's not just going to be administrative sanctions when you do this. You could go to federal prison if you do not do what you're supposed to be doing for these veterans. And I think that's hugely important.
I think so too. And I have a couple thoughts on that, Chris. The first one is the people who are going to have a problem with that that are in the VA need to go ahead and leave. They should go ahead and get out of there because they know that they will face some kind of, potentially face some kind of criminal penalty. The other thing is before that gets enacted, I feel like there's going to be some kind of objection to that. And the objection is going to be that we shouldn't put this kind of fear or stress, undue burden on these administrators. And I say contrary. If anyone in this system needs to have burden, it needs to be the administrators and not the healthcare professionals and not the veterans. So why don't we put the burden? If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen and let somebody who is equipped to do this job and feels like they know how to follow the rules and take care of the people appropriately, let them take your place.
I don't give a damn what these administrators think about anything. There are veterans right now who are living under bridges, veterans who are curled up in the fetal position in their home because they have absolutely no hope. no one to look out for them, and they get hostility when they try to reach out to the agency. I don't give a rat's ass, excuse my language, what these administrators think, how they feel about anything. I don't care if they should feel pressure and they should feel stress to properly respond to the healthcare needs of our veterans. And you know why, Danielle, there is suspicion about, they created the suspicion that currently exists. Do you think you and I would be sitting here even having this conversation right now if there were not legitimate reasons and strong evidence to believe of how profoundly they are disserving our veterans? The reason why the microscope is on them is because of their actions. They're
right.
the ones who dug their own hole here, and they're the ones, and I agree with you 100%. They should either leave now, understand that there's a strong prospect that you're going to end up in prison if you contribute to the death or the demise of a military veteran because of your incompetence or your hostility or your failure to do what you're supposed to be doing. And it has to be that way, Danielle, and I don't see it changing until these administrators understand that they could literally be criminally prosecuted and lose their freedom if they don't do what they're supposed to do. And I think Mark is so much on to something there. But I just can't, it's hard for me to understand that we live in a country like this. And I love our country. There are many great things about our country, but this is something that is so abysmal that our veterans would be treated this way. And it has to change. And I'm so glad Mark Lucas, as you said, he is going to be relentless on this.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm proud that we will have the opportunity to support them. We want everyone to go to veteranaction.org and do the calls to action. Let your Congress members know that they absolutely have to support them. I think if we see any resistance from the Louisiana delegation, there will be a strong backlash.
No question about it. Mark specifically mentioned that he needs strong input, strong push, strong support from Speaker Mike Johnson, who
Yep.
is right here from our state, grew up where I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I can't think of any reason if Speaker Mike Johnson were on our show right now. I can assure you, I'd be shocked if he didn't express support for every single thing that Mark told us today.
Right.
So let's move on it. Let's do what needs
Yeah.
to be done.
I agree with you, Chris. Just a couple of announcements before we go. Tomorrow on For the Love of Freedom is a pre-recorded interview I did yesterday with Dr. Rich Ulrey, who's coming back, the minerals expert. It's a bit of a vulnerable episode for me because we reviewed the results from my hair analysis, and he's going to talk about all the metals that he found in my brain. So, yeah, pretty crazy. And he's got the solutions. And so anyway, we wanted it to be an episode where people understand his process and understand how he helps people move forward. So that is going to be an interesting one for sure. I'm a pretty personal person, or private person. So it was a bit different for me, but here I am. And then, so that's tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we will have our very first episode of a series that we're going to be starting called Hidden Gems. And it is with the founder of Louisiana's only tea farm. And his name is David Barron. And the tea farm has actually got some international acclaim, has won some major awards for their tea. And they're right here in Amite. So we're going to be talking to David about his tea farm and encouraging people to consider buying some fleur-de-lis tea before the holidays.
I'm excited, very, very excited about that. And on the metals, Danielle, I always knew you were a person of real metal, but it was METTLE, which is backbone. But I applaud your vulnerability to discuss it and you're doing it in order to help others.
That's right.
And that's so admirable. And you will help others through this message because there's a solution, right?
That's it. That's the beauty of this. It's not doing something just to get a diagnosis and say, well, you're doomed. It's doing something and saying, all right, here is a path forward to restored health. So that's really, really exciting. And I do hope it helps a lot of people. I would encourage people to look at his work and to give his office a call because he's just an astoundingly brilliant man. And y'all will see. Look, Chris, I have to admit, every time I talk to this guy, he's so far above my pay grade, my brain, that anyway, it's just obvious. It's obvious in the conversation that he's at a different level. So anyway, that'll come through as well as it did in the first interview. But the other thing we want to mention, Chris, is that we are moving closer to launching the members program for the State of Freedom. We will be calling it the Warrior Circle. And hopefully by the end of this week, we'll be taking signups. In the meantime, please go to freedomstate.us and press the button that says sign up for exclusive updates. And we will make sure you are the first to know when the website goes live to sign up for that. But we will be doing a monthly Zoom Q&A with me and Chris, so y'all feel like you can talk to us, get to know us a little bit better. And then we will also be doing a monthly guest live interview over Zoom. So you'll be able to ask the guest questions. We have our very first guest lined up. Should we tell them now, or do you want to tease it a little bit, Chris?
I guess we could go ahead. I guess you could go ahead and tell them now.
All right. Well, our very first guest who will be joining us for the Warrior Circle in January is JJ Carroll. He's going to be coming on. He has just last week or this week, Chris, re-entered the Border Patrol. So he will be talking about his experiences over the first Trump administration, well, the whole course of his career. The first Trump administration, of course, he left under Biden's watch, and then now he is back and in action there. So it'll be so fascinating to hear from him. Of course, he has brought to us so much invaluable information about what was happening on Biden's watch with the unlimited border crossings and the horrific human trafficking, child trafficking that was taking place. And so we look forward to hearing from him. So if you are interested, you will know that he is our very first guest. We'll also have some episodes that'll be exclusive to Warrior Circle members that you'll only be able to watch on that platform. So anyway, stay tuned. Much more to come, but we will be hopefully able and in a position to take signups for that starting the end of this week.
And continue to subscribe, continue to share, continue to support the State of Freedom as we continue to expand the voice of liberty and freedom across Louisiana. And it's a niche that I am so proud and privileged to fill with you, Danielle, on our podcast.
Likewise. It is such an honor, Chris, to have this opportunity. I just want people to know we take this very seriously. This is a real responsibility. Last week we talked a little bit about the burden of truth with William Most. And I just think that's really true. When you know the truth, you have to make it known. And this is the venue that the Lord has given us to be bearers of the truth. And we do our level best and hold it as a strong responsibility, a weighty responsibility to bring the truth to you as we best can do it.
Yep. Knowledge is power, Danielle. Knowledge is power, and we are going to spread it. And in the words of the immortal William F. Buckley Jr., one of my heroes, inveighing we shall go.
All right. See you on Thursday, Chris. Thanks.
God bless.
God bless you. The secret to losing weight 2 times faster has gone viral. See the transformations hundreds of thousands of men, women, and teens are experiencing around the world with the Slenderize drops. These homeopathic hormone-balancing drops are proven to control appetite, support thyroid function, improve energy, boost mood, and increase metabolic rate. To learn more about the drops or other incredible natural wellness and lifestyle products, email me at danielle@freedomstate.us or visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. Meet the world's first living, full-spectrum, certified organic CBDA hemp extract. Ness's hemp oil was extracted from seed to bottle without chemicals, solvents, or heavy metals, and it surpasses world-class standards for purity. This pure and powerful CBDA has been proven to reduce aches and pains, ease mental tension, and promote better sleep. To get yours today, visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. to get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.